Hi everyone, welcome to the first episode of this Tekken podcast. I haven't quite come up with a name yet, but recently, just something about myself, I guess. My name is Isaac. I'm currently a computer science PhD student, and recently, partially due to overworking in that sense, I got a bit of carpal tunnel. Maybe not full-on carpal tunnel, but something quite debilitating. So I decided to pick up recording a quick Tekken podcast, kind of a podcast about general, pretty much anything Tekken. So the game itself, how the game works, theory about the game, latest tournament results, what's going on in the Tekken world. Not really that much about uh, personalities, so I won't be talking about any Tekken drama or stuff like that, but mainly about focusing about the game itself and international competition and so on and so forth. So I thought I'd give it a go here. We kind of have three topics for today, I guess. The first being season four and the rise of not only online Tekken, but kind of Tekken after coronavirus and an anticipated rise of the American Tekken scene internationally, and arguably even the Korean and Japanese scene. I'm going to get roasted for not including Europe in that, but I'll go into more details in a bit. The next topic will be about Tekken difficulty. Why are we characterizing certain characters as difficult and others as easy? And lastly, um, maybe just a shorter note on super moves. I might actually leave this till the next episode, but that'll just be going over these category of moves that the main man referred to as super moves and their place in the game. We might get to that in a later episode, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. So let's get just so that people know my credentials about talking Tekken, I guess. I'll start, I guess, with some Tekken things. So I have a lot of experience, not a lot, but a decent amount of experience playing in tournaments, running tournaments in kind of the East Coast, New Jersey scene. I was a big part of the Rutgers fighting game community back in the day. I've been to local regional tournaments. I've been to a couple of bigger events. I think my best achievement in tournament was making it out of pools at Defend the North, which I think was like a 90-man tournament. I Yeah, I played on stream. Uh, I guess that those are my Tekken credentials. I'm not going to go much into online rank. If people are curious, the highest rank I've gotten is Emperor. I don't really play ranked that much, and when I do, it's often for leisure. So I should work on that. I should definitely play it a bit more seriously. But anyway, those are my Tekken credentials, and also a history of statistics, math, computer science, which we'll get into maybe in a future episode, talking about the technical details about Tekken and so on and so forth. So let's get right into season four. So, of course, the huge addition to the game in season four was not, in fact, um, Kunimitsu, although she was, of course, a big addition. It was really the netcode, right? The netcode improvement was the big deal with season four. I mean, there were balancing changes, obviously, also, but it was really the netcode that changed the landscape of online Tekken and Tekken at the moment. And basically, what was the big thing it enabled? Well, it enabled not only 5 bar connections more consistently around people's local areas. So a lot of the people who live maybe a couple states over in America went from 4 to 5 bar, which means you got a consistent amount of better matches. But the big thing was that the 2 to 3 bar from across the country, so East Coast to West Coast, went from 2 to 3 bar to 4 bar, which basically changed the scope of what online tournaments can be, not only in America but also in Europe. I know A lot of the UK people were just raving about how they can finally play people in Italy with a decent connection, which is great. And I think also that another big deal was 5 bars from Japan to Korea most of the time, which from a spectator's point of view is just delicious, I guess. Getting to see me go up against Chikrin in a rank. When season 4 first came out, I would watch those death matches for just as long as I could because it was so interesting seeing Japan and Korea play in an online setting, specifically me versus the current TWT champion, Chikrin. And so we kind of have to think about what's the training grounds and just how this new environment will lead to potentially um, kind of a different landscape at the top of the best players in these different regions. I think we can all agree that coming out of coronavirus, when this does happen, when everyone's vaccinated and we get back to offline tournaments, Pakistan will likely just destroy everyone. I mean, they're the only region right now that's really grinding offline, as far as I know. Every single day for hours on hours on end, they have offline streams and offline tournaments, and they're just gonna wipe everyone. They were already the strongest region, arguably, before coronavirus, and now it's probably not even going to be close. So there's Pakistan, and of course the rest of the world will have to catch up to their offline grinding. However, as far as the specifically a lot of the players who are kind of close to being the best in their region before coronavirus, I think we're going to see a lot of them having leveled up and caught up to the best players before coronavirus. For example, let's talk about America because I'm most well versed in America. I'm currently living in Massachusetts, and the American scene is really what I keep up with the most. Glaciating. That's just one one thing I'm going to say. Glaciating, glaciating, glaciating. I think he's 17, and he is the favorite in every single online tournament in America now. Even with, I mean, it's just unheard, it's just absurd. Right before coronavirus, if there was an online tournament or just any tournament that you had Joey Fury in, I mean, he was the prohibitive favorite. Assuming that you didn't have the big three or big two of Anakin, Jimmy J, and I guess Fighting GM in it, he was the favorite in America. Shadow was maybe the favorite. Him and Shadow were just leagues beyond everyone else at the time. Um, they were world class players playing with national level players, essentially, right? International level players playing with national level players. And then we get into this online world where really there's this kid who's been sleeping in the Midwest of America, just grinding online and streaming and focusing on hard hitting characters that can just get you damage whenever you want, essentially, with with appropriate movement and so on and so forth. But I'm just gonna have some water here. Um, but I mean, seriously, this kid. I'm not gonna say this kid because I'm 23 years old, so I'm not ancient. But glaciating is just. I think it's hard to argue he's not a top 5 player in the country. It's almost hard to argue he's not top 3. Yes, online is different from offline. Let's not get it twisted. Offline is still by far a bigger indicator of skill, in my opinion. Offline tournaments are how you prove yourself among the best in the world. But when you're going up against the best, really Joey Fury, Shadow, Bin Chang, just all these veterans at the game, and sometimes it's not even close. Sometimes you're watching this and you're just watching Glaciating's unique style of play where he'll just stand and guard because he realizes that sometimes just if you have the read on the opponent, even Korean backdashing gives you these frames a vulnerability in the neutral that aren't even worth it. And if you just stand and guard, if you have the read, then that's actually the best thing to do. And he'll just blow you up. And if he gets a savage down back threes going, the round's over with Miguel. I think glaciating is going to come out of coronavirus and just really destroy everyone. And I think also players like Cuddlecore and some online players, well, mainly online, it seems like ByDX, who really weren't heard of before, um, across the country, and obviously Run It Black is playing online still, but Bin Chang, I think this experience across the coast, I mean, East Coast and West Coast, their play style in general is so drastically different. It's absurd. I mean, it's about as different as you can get as far as play styles go typically. I mean, you can further break it down into regions: SoCal, NorCal, East Coast, the Atlanta region. But we're kind of seeing just an overall leveling up across the country. Japan versus Korea, I think there's a similar, right? Of course, there's a similar situation where all these players are now getting to grind against each other online. However, I think the slight difference is that we're not. I mean, obviously, Dotering is doing great, and Pena is going to be a hard hitter coming up, it seems. But really, the top player landscape doesn't seem to be changing much in Japan versus Korea. Yes, it's great to see, and I think Cherryberry Mingo in particular is kind of ascending recently. Double might be ascending, but we're still looking at Ni, High Ulsan, JDCR, Chikrin, Chanel. These Naroma, these are still the best players. Novi are still the best players. Pena, I guess, is really on the come up, but we're not quite seeing the same level of, in America at least, that is, oh, this guy is now threatening to take Ni's spot or High spot or Chikrin. It just doesn't exist. And yes, I know that those players don't participate in the online tournaments quite as much as the other people in America, for instance. But I mean, of course, Glaciating is not fighting, and these other players. Anakin, it's similar because Anakin and Jimmy and Fighting GM, uh, three of the top five players in America, are not in these tournaments. But still, Joey and Shadow are Tekken World Tour final level players. They're just that good, and we're seeing players threatening them. Pena is the really the main guy in the Japan Korean region who I see kind of reaching that similar level as like a glaciating a cuddle core who's clearly leveling up quite a bit. Um, so yeah, I think after coronavirus, I think we can safely assume that Pakistan will obliterate everyone, but I think that the American region in particular is going to really come out just a lot stronger. With Europe, I'm going to slightly caveat it because, yes, I understand that people can play across these different regions a lot more. And we just saw Ultra Instinct Potato win ICFC. We've seen, we've seen up and comers, right? K Wiss. Love him or hate him, his Horrong online, at least, is a monster. It's a monster. And I almost don't want to preface online because he has offline tournament experience also, but he just exposes people who don't know how to take a breath during a match. If you're playing K-Wiss and you're not calm and thinking and just breathing properly, I mean, he's going to just blow you up. And it's going to be 3-0, 3 rounds, 0. You can't do anything. Just frame Skyrocket in the face every single time. He's playing great. Let's just break down his accomplishments recently. Commentating, for those, I know a lot of listeners probably, or just a lot of Tekken players, do not have experience commentating and playing at the same time. I have experience not only commentating and playing at the same time, I have experience commentating, TOing, and playing at the same time. And just any combination of those two, it's so much extra work. I mean, your brain is active the entire time. So the fact that he can pretty much with no breaks be placing so high in these tournaments, that's a very good sign. Eddie is of course just an online monster. I would still rank him as the best online player in the EU. Yes, we still have Kalik, we have Super Akuma Dub from Paris, Seppi Black, Jerlanda. These are still generally the best players. Fergus, again, these are generally the best players, and I don't see the landscape in Europe changing quite as drastically as it is in America. In America, it really does seem like there's a surgence of new players that are just going to take over the entire scene once coronavirus is over. Um, once you go from this national experience to this international offline experience, their skills just going to exponentially increase, in my opinion. Don't be shocked if again, kind of assuming, or kind of have to assume that Hira, Arslan, and Atif Butt are not going to these tournaments. But assuming those three aren't there, you know, don't be shocked if the first couple of major TWT events in America are won by Glaciating, are won by Cuddlecore, are won by Shadow. Even if Anakin and Jimmy are there, or even won by Avery, that's how much I think these players are leveling up. Hi, welcome back everyone to this Tekken podcast. Yet to be named. We're working on it. By we, I mean me, I guess. Let me know if you have any suggestions for a name of this podcast. But next topic, I kind of want to talk about Tekken difficulty. What makes a character difficult? I'm going to be honest. I am not the most experienced Tekken player. My first competitive Tekken is Tekken 7. I played casually Tekken 5, Tekken 6, skipped Tekken Tag 2 altogether. So, my perspective is a bit skewed. but this is somewhat of a reaction to a recent main man tier list I saw, Tekken character difficulty tier list. It's a reaction to JDCR's comments recently about character difficulty and just overall sentiment in the community about what makes a character difficult. And recently I got challenged pretty hard by my training partner um, about what it means for a character to be difficult. And I was pretty much saying, execution only matters if you don't have execution with the character, then the character changes drastically, right? If you don't have good execution with Heihachi, the character is a totally different character. If you don't have good execution with Akuma, he's not even a recognizable character compared to someone who does. So we were talking about that, and then I said, well, the other important thing is like decision making. I just want to have a nice shout out to Eris, who back in the day, when he was, mainly a Tekken content creator, he said the thing he values most in a tier list and when he makes these tier lists are decision making in the clutch, ease of decision making, right? One of the reasons he put like in season one, like Dragunov near the top, running two, down two, that's it. Running two, down two, jab, down forward one, maybe down three occasionally to end a round, down 1-4 to catch people out, down forward 3-4, 4-3, down forward 4-3, 3-4, forgot. Up forward 4, up forward 3. I haven't played Dragunov in a while, but grab mix-ups, so simple decision making in the clutch. Panic move, backswing blow, one of the best backswing blows in the game. You're by the wall, forward 1+2, get the plus frames, mix up with down 2, down forward 1-3. I mean, it's a character who has a small set of tools that are so powerful and so much better than the opposing cast that decision making is so much easier. If you have ever tried to play a character like Ling or Leo or arguably Fang, although not as much in season 4, but like season 2 Fang. You have so many moves, and yes, a lot of them are great moves, but you really have to constantly be thinking. I would argue Law is similar, which yes, this is me. I'm a Law main, so this is me totally um, giving Law too much credit. But Law has literally so many good moves for every situation, and choosing between them can be very difficult, right? You have to say, okay, I want a low crush. I could hop kick. I could forward 1+3. When do I want to do this? I could delay a hop kick. I could flip kick. I could try and interrupt with a down forward 2. I could fake flip, see if a low whiffs, and then punish, so on and so forth. Um, it's not quite as hard as some of the other characters, but like Nina, even if you want good results with Nina, you have to mix up your move choice. You need to constantly be thinking, especially in the clutch. Yes, you have down forward 1, cancel down forward 1 until they press a button and then you win. But nonetheless, in the neutral especially, you have to constantly be thinking about move choice. And it's difficult. I think that, makes a difficult character. So my friend said, you can't define it in these two extremes because you're just inconsistent. Um, I kind of said whatever because I think we don't have to simplify Tekken to the point where we can't have different factors in this tier list, or like when we're talking about Tekken difficulty. But I'm going to maintain, even if he vehemently disagrees and thinks I'm being inconsistent, I'm going to maintain that execution exponentially increases in terms of how important it is, the more it contributes to the character's identity in terms of difficulty. Kazuya is another prime example. Really, without execution, you can't. You just. It's very difficult to play Kazuya. I would argue near impossible towards the highest level. And by without execution, what do I mean by this? What do I mean about good execution? I mean, if you're not punishing 15 frame, minus 15 frames with electrics consistently, that's not good enough execution, in my opinion, to play Kazuya at a near optimal level. Obviously, no one knows what optimal level is, and no one can play Kazuya fully optimally because he's that hard. But we're talking about an effective level that will win you games against most players. And this is so debated and will be so controversial and subjective, but hey, that's what this podcast is about, maybe. We'll get into more mathy stuff in future episodes if you guys want. But uh, so yeah, Akuma is another example. Again, without execution, what is Akuma? And I think putting Kazuya near the top of the tier list is justified because even though you could argue, okay, well, if you have perfect execution, not only is he the best character in the game, but his decision making is very simple, right? It's spam electrics until you sense a counter hit, down forward 2, and you literally win the round if you have perfect execution. You don't even have to think about his great poke of down back 4. That doesn't even need to be in your arsenal because you can wave dash so quickly and get a hell sweep or a wall standing 2 where the risk reward, because you have perfect execution and you're going to do a 4 electric combo, it's so worth it and it's fine. But so I argued that the most difficult characters in the game by far, I think, are Brian, because if you can't do taunt, then really you're missing out. It's a different character. If you cannot do taunt at the wall, he really is a different character. Yes, he has great neutral tools. In my opinion, 3+4 is great. Everyone knows it's great. Orbital, neutral jump, orbital is great. Mock kick's great. Jab is great. Back 1 is great. Forward 3 is great. Soccer kick is great. Honestly, season 4 Brian is a bit too much, in my opinion. The fact that mock kick is -9 instead of -10 is a bit much. His hatchet kick is so good. It's almost like you have you should be using it so much that his decision making is a lot simpler because now he has just these moves that are so ridiculously good and you should be moving them a lot. Down forward 1, I mean, most Brian's nowadays, I think, are realizing how ridiculous down forward one, or they're showing us how ridiculous it is. Knee, Bilal, the amount of down forward one ones that they're throwing out is just absurd. So Brian, maybe he is, in my opinion, the most difficult character in the game because of the balance of execution and decision making. However, I don't think it's as astronomical as it was in like season one or season two, where man, Brian was just he was in a different class, except for maybe Akuma with execution. I would argue Eddie. See, this is another thing. Eddie, I want to talk about difficulty in terms of maybe not at the highest level, but just at a decent offline tournament level of play, right? If you're not getting 2-0'd at every single tournament you enter, then you're there. I think you're at this level of play where people just know the matchup. You're assuming your opponents have spent at least a few hundred hours in practice mode and so on and so forth. Eddie, man, maximum respect to Eddie players. He is just so difficult. You need perfect backdashing, literally perfect. You need amazing reactions with punishing, smart offense, because again, he's so risky that to win games with Eddie, I think is very difficult. Yes, I fully understand Main Man's point and everyone's point that at lower levels of play, he is so easy and will just blow people up. And even at intermediate to high level of play, you can get away with some ridiculous things with Eddie. I struggle with Eddie, um, with defending against Eddie a lot of times. Um, but really, when you play someone who you know who knows how to defend against him and who knows the matchup really well, I mean, it's crazy. If you watch Spirojin play, he blows up and destroys almost everyone, and then he'll hit Joey Fury, one of his main training partners, and the game will just look different. You can just tell that Spiro is putting in a trillion freaking IQ points into his game to try and get wins off Joey. Um, he's very difficult. Armor King is up there. But the main reason why I want to talk about this is not to give my full tier list of difficulty, but to also debunk, in my opinion, or to denormalize a character who is considered objectively difficult, quote unquote. Arya, who I of course have loads of respect for, and I think is probably produces the highest quality Tekken content on the internet, but who they say is objectively difficult, who JDCR even. That's right. This opinion is going to go against JDCR. Controversial. Everyone says it's difficult. There's data that shows that he does not win a lot. And I'm talking about Steve Fox. I will. I cannot be convinced that Steve Fox is a top five, top 10 difficult character in the game. I understand that his down forward two combo into a screw is one of the hardest consistent execution things in the game. That is arguably, I don't think so, arguably necessary to play the character at a high level or just to win games with him. But if we break down his decision making, I think he has arguably top three easiest decision makings in the game. Top four, definitely top five. If you watch any Steve player at the highest level, I mean, Ni, um, Hira, Atif, Naroma, man, Fighting Spirit, any Steve at the highest level, there's a couple who are not quite like this. I would argue that there's a couple of maybe extra interesting Steve. There was the one from Spain in a recent ICFC who I forgot his name, but pretty much everyone has the same decision making problem. And the only thing that they have to worry about ultimately in winning their games is timing and the timing of their opponent's attacks. That's it. Other than timing, and I guess high, low, or mid, that's the game they're playing. Any other Tekken character, you're worried about things like Well, I guess you're also kind of worried about stepping with Steve, but you're worried about stepping. You're worrying about whiff punishing. What happens if I whiff? What happens if my move gets blocked? You're worrying about all these situations. You're worrying about what's the probability that my opponent just does something freaking crazy. All these things. And that's true with pretty much every character except maybe Akuma. But with Steve, his back one and down forward two destroy so many of your opponent's options and are by so far the best counter hit tools in the game and are so safe. The risk and reward in these moves, it's it's broken, honestly. It's so absurd. Um, you're so safe. Outside of top 20 players in the world, your opponent's not going to punish back one. When Arslan whiff punishes back one, he celebrates. He does a mini celebration on stream. He's like, "Oh guys, did you see that?" That is how hard back one is to whiff punish. Down forward two is the most perfect move in the game, maybe. Before the execution barrier, it definitely was. Um, and I think these moves, personally, are so good that unless again you're talking about playing maybe the top 3 or 5 best players in the world, you do not need the down forward two. You do not need any of the hard Steve combos, and he is still a top 5 player in top 5, top 10 character in the game. You do not need the down forward two pickup combo. You do not need the hard wall combos. You do not need the advanced extended duck execution, which by the way, extended duck can be option selected if your opponent's really good with sidestep right duck, even though it doesn't happen very often unless you're literally watching near Arslan. But um, man, you do not need this crazy execution to get an absurd character. And if you actually remove all of Steve's execution and you just do the easy stuff, you're still so safe. You still have the best rage drive in the game. You're still going to do the exact same things. Without execution, you're going to do the exact same moves in the exact same scenarios. And guess what? That's 10 moves. All right, in the neutral, you're doing back one, down forward two, you're doing jabs. To end the round, you're doing down 2-1, you're doing down forward one. By the wall, you're doing down back 3-2, or you're doing smash. That's it. That is the character. If you need a comeback, you have the best rage drive in the game. He, I do not understand why people think he is so absurdly difficult when, if you take away the hard execution stuff, you still have one of the best characters in the game. So, with easy decision making, when you only have to worry about one aspect of your opponent, pretty much, which I would argue is timing, then you're simplifying Tekken. And once you start to simplify Tekken, you start getting, I mean, into easy characters. Why do everyone think Claudio is easy? Back one. Oh, it's so easy. Back one and hop kick. I just have to worry about range. Once I'm in range of my opponent to do these moves, these are the best moves I have. Why would I do anything else? Steve is the same exact way. And yes, you could argue other characters are the same way, but a lot of them it's not as obvious, right? Yeah, maybe Lei is the same, right? Maybe Razor Rush and Hell Sweep are literally all you should be doing. But it's not quite as obvious because those two moves are not so astronomically better than all of his other moves, and they're not so astronomically better than every other move in the game. Back one and down forward two, option select almost everything. And you're so safe. And it's just crazy. And don't tell me, oh, you need the down forward two combo. Oh, you need it. I'm sorry, I'm going to do my safe homing mid that's almost impossible to whiff punish, is safe on block, as I said already, has good range, and if I counter hit and do the easy follow up, I'm in the 40s of damage. Or is it 35 plus? You're in a chunk. I mean, he's just so good without execution. Stop saying he's as hard as Brian or Lee or Yoshimitsu or Armor King or Heihachi. He is not in the same class as a hard or Kazuya as hard as those characters because you can go online with just those moves and win. And furthermore, I know my friend said, "Oh well, the statistics do not support that because his win ratio is not that high." I'll just straight up, I'll be the minority. I'll be the guy who cried wolf. People do not recognize how good these moves are until they get to the highest level. People in intermediate, they rely on his strings. If you just abuse those moves, you will win more games. If you just follow the flow, not the flow chart, but the simple decision making of down to 110 rounds, smashy at the wall. I forgot the command of smash, but it's the left hook that goes into flicker that wall splats and is safe. Um, with punish with Sonic Thing. I mean, just so easy decision making. I'll argue that all day. Yes, timing matters with other characters, but with Steve, it's just a bit too simple. I was gonna get into super moves to end out the podcast, including Steve's down forward too, but I think we can save that for next episode. There was a bit too much negativity maybe in the last segment, but let me know what you think. Feel free to message me on Spotify. Is that even a feature? I genuinely don't know. Or message me on Twitter. I guess I'll share my Twitter handle. It is at igloos, capital I, at igloos underscore. At igloos underscore. Feel free to message me and let me know your opinion. Let me know how wrong I am about Steve. Let me know who you think is the biggest upcoming player in this coronavirus world, online world. I do not want to hear about Farzine. He's going to destroy everyone because he's playing offline. I want to hear about like Americans, Europeans, Japanese, Koreans who are on the come up, or any other region. Skywalker shouts out, Ivory Coast player. But yeah, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you tune in for the next episode. Have a great day.